If you need the water, check the beaches in the Carolinas. If you need the mountains, try the Appalachian Trail. If you need the redwood trees, gotta go to Yosemite. If you need me, 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 I'll be in Kansas City.
Welcome to Kansas City Limits Radio. We're in the studio today with some, I wouldn't call them strangers because we've known them and we've seen them in the music scene for quite some time. But we've got the mighty Phonics, Mr. Patrick Recob and Russ Kidman here in the studio today to tell us a little bit about their journey and what they're doing now and how long they've been doing it. And but before we get there, my name's Robert Bierce. I'm one of your voices of this program. Thanks for joining us. And hello, J.E.
Hello, Robert. Thank you. That was nice. And fellas, thank you. Russ, the Kidman Shanky, right? And
Yeah,
now
that's
we
it.
put
Yeah.
that out there. And, of course, Patrick Cobby Recob, thank you for being here, brother. I'm glad we got to put this together.
Well, on behalf of the Academy, we want to thank you for having us.
Please. And, Robert, why don't you tell the fine folks how we get to do this?
Yeah, we can't put this on without the wonderful support of those out there really helping original artists in the Kansas City area. So we want to thank them. Kansas City RVs voted 2023's favorite RV dealer here in Kansas City by the Kansas City Star. We also want to thank AMPR, Area Musicians Promotional Resource, a non-for-profit organization. We want to thank Black Moon Media, LLC, Photos, Videos, and Magical Souls, and our Kansas City Limits Television executive directors. We also want to thank Open Mortgage, where better is possible and owning is still better than renting. We want to thank Knuckleheads KC, a music joint voted #1 music venue in Kansas City by the Kansas City Magazine. Kansas City Limits TV and radio. Those are the products we produce for original musicians. Kansas City Limits and TV radio, spotlighting Kansas City's local musicians and much more. Soundworks Recording Studio in Blue Springs for over 20 years, where KC Limits, this program, radio is recorded. S&S Printing, a commercial printing and design company. B4 Productions, creating commercials and videos. They'll bring your ideas to life. Summit Video Services, award-winning video productions and video services. Midwest Music Foundation, giving local musicians the care they deserve. And welcome to Kansas City Limits Radio.
That was outstanding, Robert.
Thank you, sir.
They get longer and longer every time we get to
And
do
I just
this.
learned how to read. This is incredible.
Oh, well, that's okay.
English.
And you're a little dyslexic anyhow, I'm pretty sure.
First before last.
Yeah. Well, again, welcome to the show. We've got Patrick and Russ, and we'll first jump off the page here with the #1 question was, tell us a little bit about how you, the Mighty Phonics, other bands that you're with, how those got put together and who they consist of.
Well,
Sign language is taking place in the studio.
There it is. Okay. What
You go
can it
first.
say?
Well, I think Patrick, you just say it so nicely that we'll leave it to you to kind of work that
in
out.
which voice?
Well, Rush, you got something out there, buddy. That's good.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go. The Mighty Phonics were formed, 5 brothers, basically originally 4 brothers that had been knowing each other for a long time. Kidman and I have known each other for quite some time, and the band consists of Russ Kidman Shanky, Carl Angerer, Mike Shine-Top-Sedovic. Carl plays guitar, Mike Shine-Top-Sedovic plays piano and organ, and I play bass. I play a little bit of guitar and I sing. And our drummer is Dwight Dario, who's from Iowa and lives up in Des Moines,
Okay.
and is a Iowa Blues Hall of Fame
Wow.
musician. He has played with many, many famous bands. I mean, I think it'd be maybe a little egotistical to say that we're like a super group or something like that, but each of the guys in the band bring something from their various different connections, and a number of us are national act artists.
Right on.
Russ plays with Bridget and her Bandoliers here in Kansas City.
Yep.
And in Kansas City, I play primarily with the Mighty Phonics and the House Rockers at Knuckleheads when we play at Knuckleheads. And that band is another group of well-known traditional blues guys that includes John Paul Drum, Hyson Taylor, and Bill Dye. And we have a rotating chair of guitar players sometimes as it is because schedules don't always allow us to play together.
Right.
But in addition to that, Dwight, who plays drums in our band in the Mighty Phonics, I play in 2 bands with him in Des Moines. And together, we play with a guitar player by the name of Matt Woods, who's becoming a nationally known guitar player.
Indeed.
And we're doing all the music that I'm involved with is primarily old school traditional blues.
What's the name of the band with you and Dwight and Matt?
The Matt Woods Band.
Okay.
And Matt, Dwight, and I play with another harmonica singer by the name of Malcolm Wells, and we have a band there called the Two Timers. And it's Malcolm Wells and the Two Timers, and we just put out a record not too long ago.
And that's up in Iowa?
That's in Iowa, but here in Kansas City.
Des Moines?
In Des Moines.
Yeah.
And here in Kansas City is the Mighty Phonics, and I have the House Rockers as well, and Russ has Bridget and her Bandoliers in addition. And when we put the band together, the 4 of us had been great friends for many years, and Carl had played in the Blues Notions. That was a fairly big band back in the 90s in Kansas City. And Shinetop, Mike Shinetop Sedovic, we always refer to him as Shinetop because that's what everybody knows him as, was one of the piano players in that group. Carl and I had the Confessors with Lee McBee. We were the Sunday night house band at BB's Lawnside Barbecue for 20 years. I joined the band in 2005, and when Lee passed away in 2014, Carl and I continued with the Confessors, and we'd have alternating musicians come in and out on the guitar, or we'd have Shinetop come in and play piano. And at that time, Shinetop was the Wednesday night house guy for a long period of time. And then he left doing that to go play with Trampled Underfoot, and he was their piano player, and he was with the Danielle Nicole band. And so we have always had these great affinity for each other as people, and I think it's easy to say we're family and that we're brothers.
And great musicians.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. But the thing is when we decided, well, the Confessors, when COVID hit, the Confessors were getting ready to celebrate their 20th year. And we felt that Alan Fischel was our drummer. And we felt that when Lee passed away in 2014, we felt that we owed it to BB's and to Lee and to ourselves to at least try and continue to hit that 20-year mark. And as ironic as it was, COVID hit during that year. And we were canceled, and it was, we literally played every Sunday night, with the exception of a handful over 20 years. Sometimes Lee would go on tour, I would go on tour, but we always still had the Sunday nights, or we'd get canceled because of the Chiefs or whatever. But we had that residency. That night was ours for 20 years. And we were able, the month, Lee had started in June of 2000, and in June of 2020, we had one gig that time period, and it was in June, and we were able to do our 20th year of shows. Ironically, the week after. So we hit that 20-year mark, and then after that, it just kind of went away again, and then it was time to COVID and health issues with certain members of the band kind of creeped in, and then Carl and I decided, well, we want to keep that vibe and we want to continue to play music. So what are we going to do? Well, Russ wanted to play. Shine Top wanted to play, and so did Carl and I, and we decided what we were going to do is form this band, and messing around with names came up with the Mighty Phonics, fun with phonics, stereophonic, monophonic.
It kind of sounds like the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. That's
wait,
the first thing I think of when I hear it.
You think for me, I'm quadraphonic because I've got multiple personalities. And so the thing is, when we put the band together, we wanted, naturally, we do a number of original material, and we
off of your album.
Oh, well,
your solo album.
We'll get to that. But the thing is I have been fortunate to make several albums that is all original and has been very well received in the music world and in the blues world. And I had a solo band with Jan Faircloth, the drummer, and that was the Perpetual Luau All-Stars. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But Jan was our drummer. Jan had also worked with Shine Top. It's all, as Lisa, my wife, likes to say, it's all so incestuous. This guy, the guitar player, will play with the other band, with a band, and then he'll go play guitar for the drummer's band, and they all do all these different parts. Everybody knows each other, and that's kind of how that networking in the music industry works. And so when we put the band together, we thought, well, what we'll do is we'll take 1/3 of the Confessors, because we still want to honor Lee, and we still want to honor that tradition that Carl and I had done. The guys wanted it, Kid Man talks about, well, your album, but the thing is, I made this record, and I had that band, and Jan passed away, and the different musicians that I'd have to come play with that, I wanted to keep that alive too, because that had been very well received. And so we took 1/3 of the Confessors, 1/3 of Perpetual Luau, and then we took 1/3 of something brand new, which we hadn't done before. So as the five of us that have known each other for all these decades and years that we had known each other, we thought, well, let's create something that's new. And so it keeps it fresh, but yet we still get to visit the past. So I think we got I think that kind of states it pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That tells the whole blueprint of where you've been. You have all these bands that from Iowa to here you're involved in. You've been doing it for a long time, but is the bread and butter of what you've been performing the same kind of music with all these bands?
The thing is, and I think we can openly talk about this. I mean, for blues music, our vibe is the old school blues. I mean, and that's one thing, like, say, for instance, with the House Rockers, the thing with the House Rockers, what we're trying to present is the old post-World War II Chicago blues, like that of Muddy Waters, Willie Dixon, Howlin' Wolf, Little Walter, and those particular type artists. Russ is from Chicago, so he grew up with that kind of music, and so naturally it's a perfect fit when we do our phonics thing. And so taking all these elements of all these different influences and putting it together, and with me, I've been very fortunate to have a national act career for the last almost 30 years, backing famous harmonica players. I pretty much have played for all of them, and that's in the contemporary, old school, traditional blues music. And the thing is, nowadays, and especially in Kansas City, and I don't mean to insult anybody, but when you talk about blues, when you talk to us about blues, we're thinking the old school blues guys, but there's a lot of rock blues, and it's and that's not to take away from the beauty of what we have in Kansas City, but we want to present that old school blues with the elements of all the different areas of the country. Does that sound about right? So
yeah, but we throw in some old soul in there too, and you've got some songs that are a little different on your albums that really work nice.
Well,
so what would you say your style of music is? If you had to put like a blanket label on you, what are you?
Blues and Americana, old soul.
Yeah,
something
I think
like
that would
I
probably
like a mix of that.
Soulful Americana blues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think roots would probably be more like it, because there's elements. I mean, there's elements. I mean, there are some country elements in some of the things that we do, but it's not like country of the last 30 years. I mean, we're just old school guys. I mean, the music that we love is the 50s, the 60s, and maybe early to mid 70s. And that's, I mean, granted, we're not, I don't see us as being hardcore. I mean, there are other words that are used that I'm not going to use, but the thing is there are musicians that are totally headstrong that, hey, if you listen to anything else other than this old stuff, you're not traditional. That's not true. It's about playing music, and it's about making a joyful sound when you're on stage and getting the head bob. And I think we do that pretty good.
Well, I know I've seen you many times, Patrick. In fact, I really didn't get to know you until this past year, both of you guys. I know with actually Angela had introduced me to you, and then I got to meet Russ at BB's, but I know you as the House Rockers at BB's for many years. I mean, and
I thought you were part of the building.
Thanks to thanks to Lindsey Shannon. I mean, he brought blues. It was what Kansas City sees blues today. I mean, to this town. I mean, gave it a place to be, right? And so that's where I knew the House Rockers, and Lindsey's old show also on a Sunday evening for a long time, Blues, Booze, and Barbecue, a syndicated program.
This will be buzzing at BB's Lawnside Barbecue.
Absolutely.
Turn east at 85th and Holmes and go back 50 years.
And he's still there watching you guys.
And he is, but let's be clear. I think we need to have a quick education on the House Rockers, okay? Little Hatch had a band called the House Rockers, and there are many, many, many bands around the world called the House Rockers, but Little Hatch was Kansas City's version of Muddy Waters and Little Walter and Howlin' Wolf and George Harmonica Smith all wrapped up into one, and they had the Friday night session at the Grand Emporium for many years, and that band consisted of Hyson Taylor, who's in the House Rockers now, and Bill Dye, who's in the House Rockers now, and Joe Whitfield was the bass player for many years. And then when Hatch passed away, Hyson continued that, and then John Paul was Little Hatch's protege. And so if anybody has the right to call themselves the House Rockers, it's those guys. And when we put the version of the House Rockers that I am normally a part of, I'll play some outside.
Who was the bass player with them?
Joe Whitfield. So Joe was Hatch's bass player for a long time, and you'll see Joe around town from time to time. He's not as out as much as he used to be, but he's still there and he's still playing.
Was he at Mama's gig on her celebration this past summer?
I'm not sure if he was or not because I was unable to attend that.
There was a couple of guys that I didn't know who they were.
Yeah, but
one of them was on bass.
But the thing was John Paul had the Thursday nights at BB's for a very long time with his band, the Flying Circus, and before that was the Hellhounds. And so John Paul and Hyson wanted to put together the House Rockers, and they asked me and to play bass when we started doing this thing at Knuckleheads 4 years ago. 4 years ago. We're entering into our fourth year. But the thing is, there just needs to be some clarification on that sometimes when it's the House Rockers, I'm a part of that. But a lot of times, other than the Thursday nights, when we do it Knuckleheads, when John Paul takes the House Rockers out, it might be
and that's coming up, right?
Yeah.
Knuckleheads?
We just did we haven't been booked yet for the next sessions.
But I thought there was one coming up like this weekend or something.
No, there may be. The thing is that might be because John Paul may be doing something that
I got you.
I'm not involved
in
with.
that
Yeah.
one. Okay.
And so that's kind of where that has been. So.
Well, let's focus back on the Mighty Phonics and you guys as you tour the city here locally. I mean, you guys are playing BB's, right? I've seen you at BB's. Are you playing at Nux as Mighty Phonics?
Not yet.
Right.
What other venues are you playing as Mighty Phonics?
The Hideout. Yeah, so we've been kind of bouncing back and forth between BB's
the
and
Hideout.
Love Angela.
No one knows where you're at when you're in the Hideout.
No one knows how to get there the first time.
And there's a password. We love Angela. She's a good girl.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Bridget and her Bandoliers. So that got put together. In fact, I'm going to tell a quick story. When I got to meet Russ, I don't even know who was playing. But Bridget had just got back into town from Boston, right?
Right.
And we were watching somebody, and I got to meet you. And in fact, he brings me his disc of the luau, right?
Yeah, Patrick's disc. Yes,
That's right. And
Perpetual
so,
luau.
and I'm like, oh man. So I didn't want to take his copy. I said, yeah, that's great. I don't want to take your copy. But the next time I got to see Russ, he brings me a copy of that CD. And so in our world, we get to listen to CDs and albums and stuff. And what we try to do is we pass it along, right? So I passed along. It's now somewhere in its 16th or 18th handoff of that disc here locally. People that we tell them when they get it that listen to it and please pass it on to somebody else, right?
Pass the baton.
So so we get to do that, and that was one of the albums that made it. So
It's on all streaming services, baby.
I tell you, a little personal touch like that goes a long way because half the people don't have anything to play it on, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
they're like, oh, they'll look at it, maybe read it, and which is fine too.
It's on YouTube, just like Kansas City Limits.
That's right. Nice plug. But anyway, so when we got to meet you had just started putting Bridget's band. Well, you
Back
tell
together,
us before she left. You go ahead and jump on that. You guys had a band.
Yeah, we had a band. Well, of course, as many things happen, we got together because of Patrick.
Oh,
The Glue.
the glue.
Yes. Yes, I was at a Confessor's gig, and they were just cooking. The place was full. They were just cooking. It was great. And
BB's?
yes, BB's. It was a Confessor's gig, yes, and he was fronting. And I see Bridget over across the bar, like sitting at the end of the bar, kind of where the servers go in and out. And he's singing I'm Ready, Willie Dixon Muddy Waters song, and she's singing every word of it with him. And I'm like, she's got to be a singer. Like, she's got to be a blues singer. Like, who knows every word unless you
She's
really...
not just a fan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, at some point I got to walk by there and say hi to her or whatever. And then he comes off the stage and says, go get your stuff. And so I got to go get my stuff and get set up. And I, didn't have time to go talk to her. And that was an awesome night. Remember that? I don't know if you remember that, but it was, we were,
Of course, I remember.
they,
I made it happen for you, man.
I mean, they were cooking and everybody was hopped up and then I got up and it was still cooking and everybody was hopped up. And at the end of the night, we were like just smiling at it. Yeah, that was great. And then Bridget comes running up and like, she goes, are you in a band? And I'm like, no, I'm not in a band. We got to get a band together. So that was kind of the start of it. And we got Roy Cashman on guitar and the great Smokin' Joe Fontenot, the Raging Cajun on bass. And we had Mickey Munoz on drums. And then when she had gone away for work for 6 months, we kind of figured the band was done in that configuration. And then
Was it the same name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bridget and her Bandoliers, yeah. Yeah, we already had shirts and, logos and stickers and stuff.
Nice.
So when she came back, we just started...
Which you can get
looking-
at their shows.
Yeah. Yes.
I've got them.
Yes.
Merchandise.
Yeah. So yeah, when she came back, we just started piecing, some players together and, had a couple of things that didn't work out so well. And we got a guitarist we really liked, Ben Van Dyke.
Well, you guys sound great at the Aztec. The Aztec's got a great sound, and you guys had a
Yeah.
great sound there that day that we all got together and had that show. So,
Yeah, that was fun.
and Bridget's a cool gal. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
she's genuine. For her to come back and say, "Well, I'm back. Let's do it again." And her heart's into music, so you could feel it.
And she makes great money at her day job. So this is just passion for her, which you can tell. Yeah.
And she was in Boston for those 6 months, and she felt like totally starved of music. She just said if you had blue hair and you loved classical, it was the place to be. But so she came back and she's like, we're going out every night. And we went out every night and she got called up by everybody and everybody was glad to see her and asking when we had gigs. And
I did. I saw her everywhere. I
Right.
saw you everywhere.
right. And
She's
so
got great pipes.
and she started booking gigs and we didn't even have any players yet. It was just me and her. So
Great
And yeah, you
problem.
guys came to a lot of the Kansas City Limits gigs.
right.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yep. So that's how Patrick created that band.
Oh, come on, man.
Boy,
Patrick is a wizard. He's a band wizard.
He did. I mean, he introduced us to our guitar player, and and the drummer. So you pretty much put us together.
You know, if you're a matchmaker of people, and that's a great thing to be known for, Patrick. So don't fight that. You know,
Hey, man. Well, as a kid with hyperactivity and ADD, Robert, I don't know if you grew up like that or not, but for me, it's all about the attention. And then as I've gotten older, the music was really my medicine. I was one of the original Ritalin kids, and I was literally a guinea pig for that. I mean, they had me on 1,000 milligrams of Ritalin. That's enough to put most
we've met a
people
lot of
sleep.
artists with that same
Most
lunch
people
menu.
sense.
Literally 3 in the morning, 3 at noon, and 3 at night. And the thing is when I fell into music, started listening to music, I remember it. I mean, the first song I ever remember hearing was "Hey Jude." And the first thing I ever remember seeing on TV was Herman's Hermits. And so that was, I was hooked by that. And for whatever, that was in late 60s naturally. But when I started listening to music was my,
It centered you.
It centered me and soothed the savage beast within or whatever. And it was just something that just naturally progressed and progressed and progressed. And I started, I don't know, doinking around with those little kid organs that they used to give back in the 60s. It seemed like everybody had those little Norski organs that you can have the little chords and the family can get together and sing Christmas songs and hymns and stuff. But I was just always messing around, I don't know, wailing on Deep Purple or something like that,
Was your family musically inclined? Did they do any?
Yes and no. My sister was a guitar player who was much in the vein, singer-songwriter. She was really deep into Joan Baez and James Taylor. And on the other hand, on the one side of the spectrum, my dad was into honky-tonk country music. So he's a country boy, and it was a military man. So we were all over, in a couple places. But when we were at stateside, we pretty much, from my point of view, we lived in Germany for a couple of years. So I got to hear all this different German type music. Granted, I was 4 and 5, but that makes a big impression on kids. And then when we came back, he went to Vietnam, and naturally at that time, my sister's listening to, I sneak in, just recently did that 20 albums in 10 days thing, was talking about the Doors and Jimi Hendrix and listening to Purple Haze when I was 6 years old. That blew my mind. But it was just one of those things. And then naturally, like many, many people, I grew up listening to the Beatles, but at the same time, I sucked at school. And one of my social workers, Bud Dingman, opened up a...
Bud, you hear that? Bud Dingman, we're giving you a shout out, brother.
Man, hey, the thing is he was a social worker and opened a used record shop and left doing that. And of course, naturally, the Recop boy walks into his shop, and he knew about my ADD, but he started noticing and recognizing that I'm learning... I couldn't learn anything academically, but I was learning album titles, catalog numbers, who wrote the songs, how long the songs were, the record, the publishing company, the liner notes, and I mean everything down to who even took the photos on the cover. And he calls my parents up on the phone because I'm going in there all the time, and I always had access. It was close to where I lived, close to where I went to school. And he calls my parents on the phone and goes, "I think you need to pay attention to this. Encourage him, because they say, as you know, he's not learning in school, but he's soaking this all in." And that's kind of how it turned out to be with the music. And it was just, I had several opportunities arise that I got to meet one of my being a Beatles fan. I've been very fortunate to meet many people that were a part of their organization and get to know them. But in 1986, I stumbled upon seeing the band Badfinger, and I met them, and we had a chance meeting, and we became good friends. And Joey Molland and Mike Gibbons, who at that time, the Apple Records band Badfinger, Day After Day, Come and Get It, No Matter What You Are, and I Can't Live If Living Is Without You. Those guys saw something in me, and they just kind of took me in and taught me the music business. I was a lucky fan. I never played with them, but I traveled with them. I followed them.
How old were you?
22 at that point. And then from there, it just kind of, I wanted to be in Badfinger, you know, and that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't good enough because at that point, I'm just still.
You're still climbing.
I'm still climbing.
Yeah.
And then the blues hit me. I saw the Fabulous Thunderbirds many times. It blew my mind.
Yeah.
And there was a band, a duo, Lynch McBee, that had broken up. They'd been a very popular duo in the region. And at that point, I was 19 and underage. I couldn't go into the club, but I listened to them outside because their reunion was a big thing. The Bill Lynch Band and Lee McBee, and that was a mind-blowing experience because I knew people that had played with them and that had heard them, and I wanted to see it. And I went to go listen to them in the back alley at Sneakers in Topeka, and it just blew my mind. And then I was fortunate enough to see Lee McBee live a couple years later, and it just blew my mind. Screaming Lee in the rock tones. And that I said, I want to play with that guy. And I waited 16 years before I played my first real show with him. And he became a big mentor. And one thing leads to another. Badfinger wasn't working out. I mean, it was working out. I mean, with buddies and working, I did roadie work and I got to travel and, you know, got experience, but I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to play. And then through Lee became famous with Mike Morgan in the Crawl. And from that, it's just kind of that incestuous kind of thing I was talking about where one thing leads to another. One door opens, another door opens, another door opens, another door opens, and you walk through these doors.
Was it the bass that you started with
I did.
on stage?
I you know, my thing was bass. And then I was very fortunate to go play bass for a gentleman by the name of Gary Primich, who at the time in the early 90s was based in Austin and was one of already becoming nationally known as one of the top guys in the business, in the blues world. And I went to go tour with him, and then I came off the road and put a band together with Mike Bourne. Then I started working with Kurt Crandall, who was another harmonica player that was starting to elevate, and Kurt is now pretty well known. And then it just kind of one thing led to another.
Can we go back to that phone call from the record owner to your dad?
Yeah.
It went like this probably.
Recob residence, yes? Mr. Recob, this is Bob at the record store. What can I do for you, Bob?
Bud,
what can I do for you, Bud? Your boy's been down at the store repeatedly, going through all these records. No, he's not shoplifting. No. You need to own this talent. The guy loves the music. I think he could be something. Follow it. Encourage him. Would you do that? I'm not his father, but he loves records. And no, he's not shoplifting. All right, good night. Click.
He gets off the phone. He goes into your bedroom, right?
yeah.
And says something to you that was probably wonderful.
Actually, the way that it was is my mother and my father just immediately recognized that I had that, and
That's awesome.
They're very supportive of that. And up until the time when my father passed away, like 8 months before I went national, but he was there. I played with a band called Dangerfield McNally in the 90s. That was a very, very popular Kansas City band about the same time that Carl was doing the Blues Notions and Shine Top, those guys when they were playing. And it just kind of just progressed, and
it happened. Well,
it's that step, you know.
Well, kick ass for him calling.
Oh yeah,
You know, I mean, because how old were you when they had this phone call?
maybe a sophomore in high school, freshman in high school.
Yeah, so like your parents probably at that time were like, "Fuck, what the, I mean, what is this dealio,
Robert?
What is this dealio?" And so it turns into a little bit of a direction from someone that saw you from the outside that had nothing to do with your family. And I think that's awesome. That's what people should be to someone else.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bud, next to my mom and dad, Bud is probably like number 3 influential person in my life, and he knows that.
Is he still around?
He is.
Well, man.
Topeka. He had a record shop called World Records, but the thing was, it was just, I always had a lot of encouragement for that. And yeah, I was bullied all my life, but the thing was, I could always go home and listen to my music, you know.
Cool. Very cool.
All right, guys, just for those that are joining in or finding us on YouTube, we're in the studio with The band is Mighty Phonics.
Mighty Phonics.
The great players in front of us, Patrick Recobb and Russ Schenke. Thanks again for being here. You can find Patrick on the website at patrickrecobbmusic.com. He is also on social media at Facebook, patrick.recobb. And then you can find Mighty Phonics at facebook.com, the Mighty Phonics.
And that's patrickrecobbmusic.com.
Patrick Recobb Music.
And that's RECOB, one B.
BB.
And
no,
La-
one B.
And Bridget
and her bandoliers, that's BRIGETT, and spelled out, her bandoliers, BANDOLIERS.com. And that is Russ and Bridget's band, along with, let's see, who is your bass player on that? Is it,
Well, right now we have Derek Thomas. And,
with the Uproot.
Yeah. And, but, he's been busy at times, so we've had to, go back to Joe Fontenot occasionally. So, we like working with both of them.
And who's on drums?
Ron Still.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Ron's staying really busy.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I bet you Recobb in Latin means rocks a lot with blues. Or something, it's got to be,
Ain't no rockin' here, mister. It's all blues.
It's all the blues. It's all the blues. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to your wife, Lisa. Man, what a great lady. She plays the bass too.
Yes, she does.
She's a talented graphic artist. She's just a quality person. Helped us out with Briarfest a couple of years ago when we did it in Knuckleheads. Just want to tell everyone in the world what a wonderful person you scored, man, when you married her.
Indeed.
LeezelGraphics.com. LEEZIL.com.
Yeah, and she's the merch gal. I
Yes.
see her at all kinds of shows
The
out there
Knuckleheads,
peddling. Yeah, well, I
And she
saw
does
her
merchandise,
uptown with Daniel Nicole.
Yeah.
here recently.
Yeah.
Big smile on her face always. Your recording history, the Blues Foundation, the IBC, you won
Yeah.
in 2014.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience, who you did that with, and how did that come? Like, had you guys been practicing forever to make that happen? Had you done it? Had you tried to do that once before and not got that far?
Well, the universe has been in my favor, Robert, because
Okay,
I
good.
believe in it, and I put positive thoughts out there, and thoughts do become things.
They do.
And for people that say, "Well, that's a bunch of bunk,"
It's not.
They can. And the thing is
He pointed at his
okay.
ass.
For those of
He
you
pointed at the
listening,
chair.
not seeing the video, it's not a nice. But the thing is
You're too nice.
when you believe in yourself, and when you believe that things are possible, spiritually, religion, whatever, knock and the door shall be open unto you, seek and ye shall find. It's true. And I have always had a deep-rooted spiritual upbringing and belief that this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I was going to do. This is what I was born to do, was to play. I also have a day gig. I work in healthcare. So the way that I like to tell people is, and I need that as well. And so it's like I tell the people that during the day I can help the doctors and the nurses to heal the body. I work in surgery, and I help to heal the body with the doctors and the nurses with what it is that I have to contribute to humanity. And at night, I can go out and play music and help to heal the soul. So we get mind, body,
Right on.
and soul all together. And so
Well said.
I decided that this is what I was going to do. And all these, like I said, one door opens, another opens, and not one door opens and another closes. You just keep walking forward because you believe in what it is that you want to do, and you can be successful. And I'm not making lots of money, but the connections that I've made have been absolutely fabulous. And I've got great brothers, and I've got great friends that I can make music with. So I started after I started touring with Gary Primich from Austin. I started making a lot of contacts. One of those contacts along the line was a guy named Hank Mowry, who was part owner of a club called the Rhythm Section. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Rhythm Kitchen. Please forgive me, Hank. It was the Rhythm Kitchen in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so Hank enters the picture 20 years later, and I started getting to know McBee, started getting to know Mike, and all these doors are opening. So along the line, I meet a gentleman with another guy that I'd worked for and worked with in a band that I am going just to say, all that I'm going to say in this situation is I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Steve Gerard. Steve divided his time between Canada and Denver, and he had a band called the National Debonaires, and we made 2 records. Lee played on it. I got to play on it. And that went to the Blues Blast, got nominated for Song of the Year, and I believe that won Song of the Year in 2007. And so that was the beginning. It started to do really well on the RMR charts, which is the Roots Music Radio charts, and that's their version of Billboard magazine, where all the records make it. It made it in the top 7. So then I'm moving on, and I'm starting to get national act calls, and Lee is pushing me really hard. You got to get out there and start playing with these guys, and blah 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 blah. And I'm talking about you, and I start getting all these calls, and then Gary passed away, and suddenly, and then a couple years later, the family wants to do a tribute album. They found some unreleased songs, and Hank Mowry, who was quite some time back in the 90s, it's now 2012, and I'm getting ready to get married to Lisa, and I get this phone call. He goes, "Hey, man, we're getting ready to do this tribute to Gary, and I heard his voice in my head say that you need to play bass on this record." And I hadn't had any contact with Hank for many years. And I went to go do this record. We made this album called Account to Me, which was an original album of Hank. And Hank is just a marvelous, wonderful musician. And the Blues Society, we made this record, recorded at Goon Lagoon Studio with Tommy Schichtel, who is this brilliant mad scientist that has the most wonderful analog studio. It's like walking into 1960. And so he's got all the old tape to tape and all that stuff. And it's just amazing. And we make this record, and the Lansing or the Michigan Blues Society sends this to the Blues Foundation in Memphis. And out of 600 albums, it made Album of the Year. And so we won the best self-produced CD of 2014. And that kind of put him on the map. And around that same time, there were several musicians that I always dreamed about playing with, and that was Lee McBee and Mike Morgan in the Crawl. So I'd started working with Lee at that point. And I had always, in addition to that, wanted to, I played with Lee, was his full-time bassist, but on occasion I'd go tour because those guys had reunited. Him and Mike, they split for a while and they got back together again. And then I got one of my big dreams was a gentleman by the name of James Harmon from Southern California, and he'd be able to tell you, I'm not from California, I'm from Alabama. But the thing was, he'd lived there for decades and decades and decades and played with everybody. And at that point, Harmon was one of these guys who was at the very top in the contemporary blues world. Him and Kim Wilson, those guys were about like that. Fabulous Thunderbirds, whom you brought into Briarfest. And so James and I, we hooked up through, ironically as it was, Hank.
Right.
And James calls me, and I'm starting to work with James. And next thing I know, I'm playing with some, like, the guys that I'd really desired to play with. And so then James hears me in Kansas City, and he's a producer, songwriter. He passed away not too long ago. And
well, you were playing a gig with him.
I was playing a gig
BB's.
at BB's, and he, I did a Midwest tour with him, and he says, "Sing for the people, sing for your people here at BB's Lawnside Barbecue." And I said, "Okay." And so he comes back, and he says, "Nathan James is the guitar player that was his guitar player that he brought along, and it was Adam Hagerman and I was in James's band during this tour. And James he comes back to the stage and he looks at Nathan and he looks at me and he goes, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Nathan is one of the top recording guys. He's one of several top recording guys on the West Coast. And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm making a record on you whether you want to or not, and you ain't going to tell me no." And sure enough, we made this record called Perpetual Luau, all original songs, and I wrote all the songs.
Great album.
And
Great album.
Well, thank you. And so I got to make that record. So that record hit because of James's influence and the to make your first record. To me, my top contemporary, top two like Beatles and Rolling Stones of blues was James and the Fabulous Thunderbirds. And James had a great band. I mean, just look him up, Harman. There ain't no stinking O in his name. But the thing is, we make this record and it hits the charts. And everybody's wanting a piece of Pat and the Perpetual Luau album, and that really did well. It hit in the top, I think it was in the top 90 of the top 200 albums of 2017 when it came out.
Yeah.
And so that happened, and then that really did a lot for me. Was able to put me out and do my own shows around the Midwest, and then made this record with Malcolm Wells, and that record took off. That the band up in Des Moines with Matt Woods and Dwight Dario, and that took off. That hit the top 20, and then I just made this record with playing bass, backing Mike Bourne, who has an album called Cruisin' Kansas City Style that has been in the top 10 on the blues RMR charts for the last 6 months.
Wow!
So it's just kind of, and at the same time we're presenting the mighty Phonics, and then we're bringing that up to date.
But your album with Hank, go back to that.
But the album,
you penned one song or more than one
two
song?
songs.
2 songs on there, right?
Well, I didn't. I did the one that the Phonics do, that Target. But
yep.
I co-wrote several songs with Hank on that record, and so
and then there were
Hank
Primmich
Mowry.
songs.
yeah, Hank Mowry.
Yeah. And then there were Primmich songs that you guys
Unreleased, songs that Gary never recorded that his father and his sister found. So
Again, this is Mighty Phonics, Patrick Recobb, Russ Schenke. And so I sit here listening to you go through these stories of these. I mean, does time fly? I mean, you're talking about all of these things that you've done over the years. So I just think it is fantastic that your recollection of all of the details, the names, the dates, the places.
That's his ADD.
ADD.
Yeah, that's his ADD.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man, that is freaking outstanding.
Well, I played with Brandon when he was 19 in Cobalt Project with Sue Stubbs.
Oh my God.
And Scotty Boyle was the harmonica player in that band.
I remember when Brandon was a kid playing Frank Hicks, Knuckleheads gave him a gig down there. And he was,
Yeah.
I mean, he looked like he was 12 at that time. I mean,
Yeah.
he's, an older man now. He still looks, great.
Hey,
but
man.
I wanted to plug that for you and thank you for
Thank you.
all of these stories. And then, again, you can find Patrick at patrickrecobbmusic.com. You can find him on social media, Patrick Recobb. Also, you can find Russ at bridgetandherbandoliers.com. And I know
Facebook
Bridget,
and
she's all over the social media. Okay, Robert, take us out of here.
Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and be good to musicians. We'll see you the next time on Kansas City Limits Radio.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. We have a gig coming up on January 27th at BB's Lawnside Barbecue. We have another gig coming up that would be March 30th, right? And that'll be a 60th birthday celebration for that guy. And then we have a Lee McBee, honoring Lee McBee show on June 22nd, 10 years after his passing. And then I'll be playing a Bridget and her Bandolier show on February 3rd at Outlaw Cigar. and March 16th at BB's.
Yeah.
So this one's called 12 Hours From You. It's a Lee McBee song, one of his great instrumentals that he wrote, and plays it on this big chromatic harmonica. And so I used to sit in the back of BB's, and if it was one of those nights, I'd be crying back there in the back corner listening to the song. So I always wanted to play it, and we worked it out over the years.
This is called It's Gonna Be All Right. It's a song that's written by Lee McBee, Carl Angerer and myself, the Mighty Phonics.
Na 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 I got a feeling a change is gonna come, not just for you and me, but for everyone. Don't be worried, don't be afraid, it'll be alright. Now if you ever need a friend, call on me. Oh, I'll be right there by your side. You can count on me. Don't be worried, don't be scared, it'll be alright. Don't you worry, don't let it get you down. I'm your friend, baby, and I'll always be around. Yeah, 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 in your heart are the answers to this world. Do the right thing, and the worm's gonna turn. Don't be worried, don't be afraid, it'll be alright. Na-na-la, 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 la-la. Na-na-na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na-na-na-la. Don't you worry, don't let it get you down. I'm your friend, baby, and I'll always be around. Yeah, 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 in your heart are the answers to this world. So do the right thing, and the worm's gonna turn. Don't be worried, don't be afraid, it'll be alright. 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 It'll be alright.
the one. Holy